Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress, Kentucky. I got an audio echo right now, which is
multiplied.
What is going on? Yikes! How about now?
There were two Erins.
That was really problematic. I want to just say, I've still got that echo. What's going on here? All right. I think that's better. All right. Sorry about that, folks. I don't want to throw anyone in the bus, but we've got a new producer today. So, but yes, welcome to Progress, Kentucky's Kernels of Truth. We have a super exciting show for you. We have got, a couple more days of the legislative session, so we are keeping our eye on the legislature. Coming back Friday, then they're adjourning Monday for sine die. We're going to check in on some governor vetoes that have happened in that veto period. We're going to check in on some bad bills left behind, thankfully. Some bad bills that still might have life, unfortunately. And then really super thrilled to be interviewing Erin Marshall, who is running against Jamie Comer for the Kentucky 1st Congressional District. If folks have not heard about her candidacy, you are in for a treat for sure. Obviously, you've likely heard of Jamie Comer because he's kind of launched in on the national stage as being a complete and absolute moron, and dragging Kentucky's name through the mud every time he appears on national news. So really a refreshing change here in the candidates that's running against him. So we'll chat with Erin about her candidacy. Then we're going to close out with a call to action. But yeah, really exciting opportunity to just check in with the legislature, where things are right now. But before we get into it, I want to just make sure you're ready. You there, viewers, are you ready to help turn Kentucky purple? I'm going to assume you are because you're watching this show. Unless you stumbled across us randomly on the internet, which what are the odds of that? If you sought out or clicked on our link intentionally, we've got lots to do, right? As the GOP supermajority in the Kentucky General Assembly continues to ignore the will of Kentucky voters on issue after issue, from abortion access to gun safety, supporting public education, funding affordable housing. It's clear the only way to get better results in Frankfort is to win better electoral outcomes for our Commonwealth. So we hope you'll support Progress Kentucky in our efforts to do just that. Make a contribution right now via our secure online website. Act Blue to help turn Kentucky purple. $5, $50, $500. Hey, why not? It all adds up. And as April 15th is right around the corner, none of it's tax deductible, just so you know. So you're not going to have to worry about any last minute changes to your taxes. Just go ahead and make whatever kind of donation you want. But let's check in now with our co-host. Let us know who you are, where you are, and what are you protesting today. And if you who are watching would like to share what you're protesting, what's your protest sign say, that's great. Put it in the comments. We'll share it on the screen. So I'm Erin. I'm coming to you from Childsburg, which is, of course, a deed restricted community in Lexington. And it's a sea of beige here, people. So yeah, my protest sign says, a year after the Old Bank shooting, we deserve better. So I don't know if folks noted, but I think it's 1 year ago today, is that horrific shooting in Louisville. And the legislature, marked it by doing absolutely nothing about gun safety. So as they wind down the session, it seems awfully clear they're not going to do anything about that. And that is just disgusting and unfortunate. So that's me. Chris, are you there?
Yes. Hello, everybody. Never fear. Chris Priest is here. And the beaker hair is back. I chopped off those beautiful locks and stuck my finger in a light socket, and you get this beautiful image of a Muppet. Here in Berea,
Fashion
Kentucky.
Tips brought to you by Chris Priest. Thank you.
But here in Berea, Kentucky, and protesting and wanting transparency. We have some transparency laws on the books, and I'd like to keep them there, and hopefully they will stay there as long as this nasty little bill doesn't go through any further.
There we go. We like it. We like a teaser. So yeah, for sure. So we're gonna do a few stories before we get to our interview. So we'll go ahead and get going on news of the week. So the first one is the veto session, right? So the legislature has been out for 2 weeks, basically to let the governor do what he's going to do on vetoes, and they give themselves 2 days to come back in and just overturn any of the vetoes, because of course, thanks to the legislature, we have a pretty weak governorship in terms of what it takes to overcome a veto, which is a majority. Which I just kind of wonder, like, what's the utility of a veto if it takes a majority to pass a law, and it also takes a majority to overturn a veto? Like, what's really the point of a veto, right? So there's only a kind of a very narrow group that of bills that that veto is going to matter for, and it's all just about how they manage the clock. So whatever utility there is in it, I'm always glad to see the governor choose to use it, especially if they're bills that are problematic. So what we saw on Tuesday is that he did in fact veto HB 5, which if folks recall, HB 5, that's the one that kind of criminalizes homelessness. It does a lot of other things to really jack up and boost the prison population. Really kind of an intentional effort to unwind any kind of criminal reform measures that have been undertaken in our state. And it's a bad bill, and we've spoken out against it, I think, from the beginning when it was first introduced and as it moved through the legislative session. So we were glad to see the governor veto it, saying that the governor said lawmakers didn't provide fiscal impact and analysis of it, despite the tremendous fiscal impact it will have on the Kentucky Department of Corrections. So, they didn't really want to know about the cost of the bill. They just wanted to say they were doing something to get tough on crime, because I think their constituents, they know that message can resonate with some of those folks. So it's a bad bill, classifies more crimes as violent, does more to just lock people up, makes sure that lots of homeless people are going to be arrested, just instead of doing something about homelessness, just increases the chance folks who are homeless will be incarcerated, which isn't really a solution to homelessness. So he also did a few other things that we liked. So the SB 349, which we mentioned on this show, we had Lane Boldman from the Kentucky Conservation Committee in to talk about 349, which is the Coal Protection Act. Makes it a lot harder and adds new barriers to allow utilities to retire coal-fired power plants. He also vetoed SB 16, which was a kind of ag gag bill, which made it a criminal act to use drones and recording equipment at meat packing plants or agricultural operations without consent of operating owners or managers. So that's another one that we're glad to see him veto. We will see what happens, though. And this is definitely something that, they gave themselves 2 days so they can come back and overturn these vetoes. So we'll see what they do on Friday and Monday. All right. And then, Chris, I know you had a story that you wanted to cover. So, any thoughts on those vetoes, or do you want to just get into your story?
In terms of the vetoes, it's, almost a symbolic power, as you mentioned. It's good to show that there is opposition there, but with the numbers that they've got, it gives people more time to push back, and bring more awareness to it. So that's helped stop a couple in the past. So that's what we got to look forward to. Just stay tuned, and if he vetoes it and they keep trying to push it on, then we got to keep paying attention and calling in and letting them know, like, hey, seriously, no, we don't want this.
Yeah, I guess that's a really good point, right? So for specifically on on SB 5, that, or HB 5 rather, that's a good one. Like, his veto, as we just pointed out, probably won't stand. It's HB 5, which was their 5th bill filed, which was, a high priority bill for the GOP super duper majority. So the key thing is really like call your legislators and make sure that they know that you agree with the governor and think that HB 5 should not be moved forward. So that's, I guess, as little teaser for the call to action, really, that's something that's worth calling the comment line on, is the HB 5 veto, to get that, see if the legislature would maintain that veto. So good point for sure.
Yeah. So jumping into the story that I had brought up, or that I'm bringing to the table, there is a lovely, not so lovely little bill, which is HB 509, and it's a transparency bill. It came through the House. It was a terrible bill to get rid of a lot of transparency, and like basically slashing initially saying we don't need, even as government officials, to really give any public records or access to our emails or anything like that. So it passed the House that way, went into the Senate, and the Senate committees have altered it some to add that the government will issue a email, and that email will be monitored, or will be there for open access. But there's such a big loophole. So I'm going to read an excerpt from this article. It's from the Kentucky Lantern. So for the first time ever, the law would limit where an agency needs to search for responsive records. An agency that creates these new email accounts will only needs to search those accounts or other publicly owned devices for responsive electronic records. All other communication channels may be ignored by public agencies responding to records requests. Do you know anyone who communicates only by email in 2024? No, of course not. Public employees, like all people, use a variety of platforms to do the public's business: texts and other messaging apps, collaborating tools, private social media messages, and more. Even though all records belong to the public under current law, if they are discussing public business, as Attorney General Andy Beshear repeatedly ruled, they will become effectively off limits if the bill is passed and signed into law. So initially, Beshear, our governor, was opposed to this bill. They made this change. Now he's come out more in favor of it, and it hasn't really fixed the problem here. Even with this minor amendment, like, people could use other forms of communication to respond to things and whatnot, and they could just kind of skate by with doing whatever they want. So what are your thoughts on this, Erin?
Yeah, this is, one of those kind of rare moments where I am absolutely, I absolutely disagree with the governor, right? So this opinion piece from the Lantern, it's written by a couple of folks who know the process, right? Who've been engaged and involved with it. John Fleischaker, media law and First Amendment expert who had served as the general counsel for the Kentucky Press Association. Michael Abate, who's a media law and First Amendment expert who's been also a general counsel to the Kentucky Press Association. So, the fact that these experts in kind of media law have flagged this as a really problematic bill gives me pause, right? And the fact that Governor Andy Beshear seems to disagree with Attorney General Andy Beshear, who defended a lot of these these laws and these open records laws, I think is a bit telling, right? So the fact that the one tweak to the law made it marginally better does not negate this very significant efforts within this law to kind of claw back opportunities for the public to know what's going on, and I think that's a real problem. Yeah, so I don't say it often, but I absolutely disagree with Andy Bashir on this issue. I don't think 509 should be passed. I think it absolutely is a significant step backwards for openness and transparency. And as we all know, sunshine's the best disinfectant in terms of ensuring that the people's business is above board and is being done for the right reasons, and putting significant constraints on how information is shared, what information is shared, and putting it all via official emails. Like, yeah, I hate email. I'm horrible at email, and thankfully there's text, there's messaging, and that's how I get most of my work done. It's not via email. So the fact that you're putting all your official correspondence into a network that is of less and less utility is problematic, I think, for sure. So thanks for flagging it, Chris. It's an important one. I know we've had Amy Bensonhaver on on this show in the past. She's with the Kentucky, I think, Coalition for, and I'm trying to remember the name of it, but a really important open government group.
Right. And where this bill is in the process, it would need to pass the Senate and then go back to the House, I believe, and be passed there since they amended part of it. So there's not a whole lot of time for that to happen. Hopefully it does not happen. So
yeah, for sure. That's the benefit of only having 2 days, is that they can't get a ton done, although they do find ways. So yeah, Amy Bensonhaver, who is with the Kentucky Open Government Coalition, I think she's one of the groups very critical of this effort, and has been drawing a lot of attention to it. So we'll put a couple of links from her in the show notes as well, so people can see other analysis of the bill and its kind of problematic nature, for sure. All right, so I know there's another story we wanted to get to before we get to our guest. So I'm going to move into that story, which is about the bills left behind. So this one is coming to us from the Lexington Herald Leader. Some good reporting on just which bills didn't actually move forward, which is, I think really important to point out, where they kind of lost their interest in moving some really bad bills forward. I think that's useful framing, I think, for it. So that was the anti-DEI efforts. This was, I think, one absolutely worth celebrating, that they did not get their act together. So the Senate and the House had very different visions of how to stop diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So I guess the overwhelming sentiment for the GOP was they wanted to be able to discriminate. They were pro-discrimination, but they just couldn't get their act together and figure out how they were going to claw back efforts on diversity, equity, and inclusion in schools in Kentucky. So that one seems to be dying. The anti-drag bill, Lindsay Titchener, I think, continues to tilt at that windmill and really wants to go after drag shows in all form and fashion. So she kind of moved a bill that just didn't get the kind of overall buy-in from the GOP supermajority. Also the Baby Olivia bill, which is just really a bad kind of anti-choice bill, where they're going to force kids to see this just horrible propaganda from the pro-life movement. Really glad that one didn't move forward. But some really important bills that didn't go forward as well, right? So that's the downside here. The CAR Act, if folks recall, this is the crisis aversion and risk rights retention bill. So this was the bill that was trying to do something about getting assault weapons and other guns out of the hands of people who are going through a crisis, right? So these kind of not a red flag law, trying desperately to not call it a red flag law, because red flag laws are red flags to the NRA crowd, the the 2A crowd. But this was a smart bill. It was, it had a Republican lead author. It was very much a response to the the Old Bank shooting, as I mentioned before, which is a year ago today. Really, their efforts to do something, which of course, it got a lot of attention in the kind of pre-session days. They, Whitney Westfield did his homework, got this bill moving, got lots of buy-in, but then he's the outgoing chairman of the bill or the committee that this bill should naturally have shown up in, but he could not get the Senate leadership, or the House leadership rather, to put it into his committee. So the bill just died because it went to a committee that didn't have friendly leadership, and it died there. So yeah, really just disappointing. Also, I think an important story, like if folks recall the governor's reelection race, abortion was front and center in the conversation. This is thanks to I think some very smart campaigning, and then also if folks recall, the young woman Hadley Duvall, the rape survivor advocate from Owensboro, who was kind of front and center in a really powerful ad that challenged Daniel Cameron on exemptions for rape and incest. And, everyone, when asked during that moment, right, when the ad was on the air and they were desperately trying to save, Dan Cameron's candidacy, all the Republicans were, willing to say, yeah, of course, we really should be doing, some exemptions into Kentucky's horribly restrictive abortion laws. They all said that, but then when they came back into session, nothing moved, right? So that was, I think, just a very clear showing from the GOP supermajority. And on a related note, this is just breaking news right now. David Yates, senator from Louisville, is going to be filing a discharge petition for Hadley's law. So he's going to hold a press conference tomorrow to announce he'll file a discharge petition for Senate Bill 99, otherwise known as Hadley's Law, that would provide exemptions in Kentucky's extreme abortion ban for survivors of rape and incest, women with non-viable pregnancies, and for the health of pregnant women. So that's, under current law, none of those folks have an exemption from this horribly restrictive abortion limitations. So it's, I'm really glad to see Senator Yates use this discharge petition. We will see what happens. As I said earlier, they all kind of said, yeah, we should probably do something about those, add some exemptions. But then when given an opportunity, the entire long session, they have chosen not to do anything. They've refused to assign Hadley's Law to a committee, which is a violation of the Senate rules. So this discharge petition, which allows a senator to petition to bring legislation to the full floor for a vote. If a majority of senators vote to discharge the bill, the full Senate would then vote on Hadley's Law. So this discharge petition is a really important opportunity to get the Senate kind of on the record about whether or not they're going to even allow a vote on adding exemptions. So I think it's really important that he's doing this. Hadley Duvall is actually going to be at the press conference tomorrow, and she's been a real powerful voice, and we're really excited to kind of see what happens with that. And I'm glad to see some efforts to do something for some of these bills that are just have been held up completely. The other bill that's been held up and has not moved, the Horizons Act. If folks remember Danny Carroll's efforts to increase critical funding for child care support in our Commonwealth, our friends at the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy have warned about an upcoming just financial cliff that is facing child care providers in our Commonwealth, with huge numbers of folks, really questioning the ability for their businesses to continue without some sort of support the kind of federal support is running out, and the state has not stepped up. Danny Carroll, Republican, saw the need, looked at the numbers, saw that the just really obscene amount of rainy day funds that sit in our state coffers right now, and said this is a critical need. We should move this forward. I was really pleased to see that leadership, but it just didn't go anywhere, right? Because he's not a leader of the GOP. He's just a GOP member, and so the leadership decided that there's not agreement to support child care funding in the state, and so they're not going to move anything forward. So it's been a mixed bag. Again, glad to see the anti-DEI efforts stalling out. Glad to see the anti-drag bill stalling out. The baby Olivia, but then the fact the CAR Act's not moving forward. Hopefully, we'll see some action thanks to the press conference tomorrow and Senator David Yates' discharge petition. But again, the child care funding doesn't seem to be moving either. So absolutely some challenges there. I don't know. Chris, any thoughts about bills you'd like to see move forward, or bills you like you would hope? We're glad to see them not moving.
Just first, I want to say just how infuriating and absurd it is that the GOP want to have essentially no exemptions on abortion, and then will result in a flood of kids being born that are unwanted, and then do nothing about child care. And trying to make sure that those kids are taken care of when they're young. The early years of a child's life, like 1 to 4, and certainly 1 to 2, is like exceptionally important for their growth and development. Well beyond that, and we need to do everything that we can to help and support people in having educational researches education into how to rear a child, because it's not like that's built into your brain. A lot of us just go based on the experience we had, and not all those experiences were great growing up. So it takes some time to learn new tricks than whatever's stored in your memory, based on what your childhood bringing was, and just not providing anything for regular people. Like we've got to have better from these people. We've got to demand better from these people, and how they're able to hoodwink so many into voting for them to get elected, and then go up there and do nothing, and then blame the government being terrible, is why things are so terrible. So elect me again, so I can keep it terrible, is beyond me. I'm so glad that we do this podcast to get information out there. For the people who watch it, thank you so much, and share it and spread it, and try to get some, as many people as you can to watch it, to watch us, and to read into the news of what's going on, because left or right, the more you get into local issues and state issues, the red blue lines start to can be a little bit more hazy, although our national politics have really started to try to build a trench in between those two lines, which is a shame. 20 years ago, you could have conservative Democrats aligning really, really well with a liberal Republican, and those two things happen. Now we've got there's not really that line. Like either you're somewhat liberal and you're a Democrat, or really conservative and a Republican, and sometimes going into fascism with how much MAGA is out there right now. I'm just blown away by some of this, and just really want us to do better as a state, and so happy that you and this organization, all of us are pulling together to try to make a difference.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And I absolutely echo your sentiment there that like thanks to all who are watching, and don't just listen, get outraged, and then go about your business, right? The information is for action. We've got 2 more days of session to call and demand better. And then to just remember, remember what your legislature did, and then an election's coming. So the entire House is up for re-election this November, and we are going to work really hard to connect some dots between the horrible policy or the policy that didn't move forward that everyone wanted to see move forward, and who voted for those bills or chose not to act on those bills. And I've said this again and again and again, abortion keeps coming up as a really important issue. We voted against Amendment 2 because we clearly wanted to have abortion protections in the state constitution. That was then promptly ignored by the attorney general, who told us that we were wrong in what we had voted for, and that he wasn't going to see it. So and then in Andy Bashir's election, we just mentioned the kind of the Hadley ad and how powerful that was, and they put abortion front and center in the governor's race. And we voted for the pro-choice candidate, and then he has zero power to do anything to give us choice in the state of Kentucky, and the legislature, chose to ignore that very clear signal and is not moving forward, adding these exemptions we just described. So let's pay attention, right? And so what does that mean? That means that abortion is on the ballot this November in a very real way, and you need to pay close attention to your state lawmaker, because if they did not move forward on any adding exemptions, if they did not do anything on the omnibus, if they did not do anything to expand healthcare for women in this state, then hold them accountable, right? It's my soapbox, it's my show. I get to be on a soapbox, but this is an important issue, and I don't think we're doing enough to really connect the dots in our Commonwealth and hold lawmakers accountable for what they are doing, which is clearly not where the public wants them to be on this really critical issue. But yeah, so we're going to move into our into our interview, which I think is very well timed to that tirade, because the candidate we're bringing on, who's been I think pretty laser focused in the issue that she wants to put front and center in front of voters. Erin Marshall, who's the candidate for Kentucky Congressional District 1, currently occupied by Jamie Comer, the guy who I just don't believe that he is now the kind of one of the best known Kentucky politicians, right? So there's the politician people know in Kentucky and they revere is obviously our governor, Andy Bashir. But then people know, Mitch McConnell, because he's old and evil and powerful. But then they also now know Jamie Comer because he's just such a clown and he's been on the national stage for quite a while. So I'm very excited to bring Erin Marshall on, who's challenging Jamie Comer in the 1st district. Erin, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing this evening?
Yeah, it's great. And I love listening to your soapbox because it's like you're taking the words out of my mouth. So I appreciate it.
Take them out of your mouth. I jumble them up and I throw them back. But yeah, no, this is I think a critical issue, and I was so thrilled to see your launch video, because I think you just put the issue out there in such a powerful way. So we're going to put the link to that, to your website and the show notes, and put it in the chat so people can watch it. But yeah, if people haven't seen it, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, why are you getting in this race, and what are you trying to challenge Jamie Comer on?
Yeah, well, like I said, Erin, it's like you're taking the words out of my mouth, because I am getting into this. And the reason I became so invested in this is because we have elected officials, whether it's on the state level, like you were just talking about, or a federal level, that we are electing to represent us as Kentuckians, and they're not listening to the will of the people. And that's, I think, particularly evident on this issue of abortion, looking back at that ballot initiative and then Governor Bashir's re-election, where we talked about Hadley, and we made such a point of the fact that this draconian abortion ban is making life untenable for so many women and so many families. And if you haven't seen my launch video, then I'd love to tell you about this because it's incredibly personal to me. In 2018, I had an unexpected pregnancy. I was single at the time. I was in a period of transition where I had been working as a field organizer on campaigns and wasn't exactly sure what the next part of my life held. And then I found out I was pregnant and was fairly far along, and there were some indications of potential complications, and it was a really scary time. And I was so lucky at that point in my life to have choices that women in Kentucky no longer have. And so I was very lucky to not have those complications that I was worried about, but I still had a choice to make. And ultimately, the choice that was right for me was to move home to Kentucky and have a baby. But that's not the choice that's right for so many women for whatever reason. And so, when Roe fell and Kentucky changed for the worse, unfortunately, it really motivated me, and I think so many women, to get involved. This is a shared experience that a lot of women have. 1 in 4 women, I think is the statistic, have an abortion story. And they've had a story where, their reproductive health has been really impacted by something. And so it's time to hold our elected officials accountable for the things that they're doing that aren't reflecting our values. And so I'm really honored to be the Democratic nominee to run against Jamie Comer and to tell him that Kentuckians are fed up with what he's doing in DC.
That's fantastic. And I think it's interesting because clearly his district was changed.
Mm-hmm.
It was changed so that and who knows, you'd have to ask the legislature why exactly they changed the 6th district. And my hunch was they wanted to make it basically harder for it to be a purple, for the 6th district to be a purple. That was my theory, is that they took Frankfort out, Franklin County, because that was like one of the more challenging counties for Republicans, right? And if Erin and I share more than just our first name, which obviously it's not the same first name, but we both worked on field campaigns, and so my first field campaign ever was Amy McGrath's campaign for the House, right? And if folks recall, there was a huge backlash to Trump. A lot of incredible women were running for office. One of them was Amy McGrath, who had this amazing life story and really, a pretty impressive launch video, launch ad, and, really captured the imagination of a lot of folks and a lot of funding, right? And that was for the 6th district, which, ultimately really hard to win, no matter how much money you have, because Amy had more money than I think anyone has had in that race for quite some time. Opened up a field office in every single county. I was honored to be a field organizer in that effort, got to meet folks across that district. And then, it was close. Like, I firmly believe Amy could have won that race had Trump not come to Madison County for that final rally to support Andy Barr. But she made it really close. And then the next time they had a chance, they took one of the districts that, or one of the counties that made it close, and put it into Jamie Comer's district, which is the 1st district. But then also conveniently made sure that Jamie actually lived in the district, which you don't legally have to live in the district, but he clearly had moved and was not really living in his district anymore. And so he was in, but that added your county into the 1st district as well. So gave him an address in the district, but it also gave you an opening. And I don't know, like, what, obviously Roe is such a huge deal. And I think it's been a game changer for the kind of political analysis and what people see as critically important for politics and politicians to be dealing with. But how do you think it's going to translate, and what are you hearing out there as you're now launched your campaign? You're talking to people. You've got this very powerful ad that tells the story, your personal story. Are you seeing that is something that people are kind of like, absolutely, it's resonating, or it's like you got to do some additional explaining of why it's important, or where are people with this?
No, I think, first of all, let's talk about the district, because it is crazy if you look at it on a map. It's wild. It's incredibly gerrymandered. That's all I can really say about that. It's wild to look at. It's huge. It's a huge, huge district. And because of that, lots of different Kentuckians are represented across it. But I think a theme that I'm hearing is that people are so glad that there's someone running and contesting on these issues. I think as Democrats, part of our duty beyond just running is to help build the party in counties, and to really, that's our duty as people, right? We have to contest these elections. It's our job. We can't just leave a seat uncontested. We have to run everywhere. And so people are so excited that there's someone here to run. And the issue of abortion, I think, does really resonate in this district. I'm going to get the exact numbers wrong because that's what I do. I'm not an exact numbers person. I think it's mom brain sometimes. But, if we look at the ballot initiative, Governor Beshear's election, I think it was 43 and 44%, voted our way on those. And so I think that there is a lot of room that we can make. There's a lot of groundwork that we can have in these districts, talking about abortion, and then the other issues that I think are really important to working families here in Kentucky. I am a single mom, and I very deeply understand what the average family goes through in Kentucky, the economic struggles that we have, and it's hard to raise a kid, right? On one salary, on two salaries, no matter what it is. And so I think those are issues that all tie together that Kentuckians are so excited to have a way to talk about. We have a representative in Congress that's playing politics right now and really focused on his national persona and, what we're doing with the impeachment. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity to talk about these kitchen table issues that affect people day to day. And so hearing a lot of excitement from people about that, it's been so wonderful to hear. I don't want to say it's surprising, but it's been really pleasant to hear people's excitement about it all.
That's awesome. I'm really glad to hear that, the excitement I'm seeing, is something you're being met with as well. So really glad to have Chris here on as the co-host this week. We have a kind of rotating cast, but I thought it'd be really appropriate.
What?
Because Chris ran as well, right? So these are big districts. I mean, I did just pull up just in case folks had forgotten, the map for the first district. Like, look at that thing. Like,
it's gerrymandered like crazy. Like, how do you have you even tried to have a plan to go to every single county and try to talk to people? Like, I was able to do it as the sixth district because they're all lumped together there fairly nicely. And, it's only an hour and a half drive from, where I live to any other point. And, but for you, man, like that's gotta be nuts.
You can't even drive in a straight line across the district. It's wild. You got to go down and up. So
like there's no way you can drive from one side of the district to the other without going through other districts, really, unless you're just like really like lots of county roads or whatever. That's nuts. And I think you can, like, the most direct route from like one point to the other will probably take you through at least 3 other districts, right? It's like, it's insane. It makes no sense, except for, they want to make sure it's a safe district for Jamie Comer. So I'm glad that, you're challenging him and to show him that it's not in fact a safe district, and that, they are going to reap the whirlwind of what they've created. But have you been all the way to the other side of the district yet?
Not while we've been doing this yet. I'm super excited. We've got some plans in motion, so that'll be on the table, and we'll hope to get some information out about that. I am so lucky in my life. I have gotten to travel the state pretty broadly, and oddly enough, it's because I grew up as a golfer, and even more strange, it's how I got into politics. So my lifelong golf coach was Drex Davis, who I'm not sure how familiar you are with him, but he had a political career. His father was an elected official with a long political career, helped build up the Democratic Party here, and pushed a passion for public service with me, encouraged this in the time I was growing up. So I've gotten to travel the state a lot. I'm very excited to get to do some more of it and spend some time with people on the ground. I know that, like I said before, I'm a field organizer, so that is where my heart is talking to voters and talking about the issues and doing the groundwork. So I am very, very excited to get back out there. But yeah, it's going to be lots of time on the road, a lot of really crazy travel. I'm very excited.
Well, I'm glad you're committed to it. Yeah, it's awesome. A lot of the state.
Thank you for running. It's a tough road. I'm curious if you'll dig back into your life and just tell us, like, what kind of experience you're bringing that really helps shed a light on your perspective on some of the more important issues. You've done a little bit of that already, but just kind of shining where your life experience is coming in and shining a light on issues that are important to you other than the abortion issue, which you talked about earlier. Like what? Because there's a lot of a lot of awful things going on, and we need attention all over the place. And it's good to have a focus, and I think I really appreciate your focus. And I'm curious of what are some other issues that are really important to you?
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that question, so I'm going to work to answer both of them. I think first, I like how you asked the question about my background and my experience. I think that when we think about people running for office, traditionally, we have elected a lot of people with really similar experience. We're looking for a resume that a lot of times says doctor or lawyer or something like that. But I think that's part of why we've gotten ourselves into this mess, is that we're looking for people whose resumes check certain boxes of their life experience. And we have to try something different to correct a problem that we've unfortunately gotten into. And that's electing people with diverse life experiences from all different walks of life, from different backgrounds. And that's what I'm hoping to bring to the table. I don't know of another, I'm sure there's been people, but off the top of my head, I don't know a lot of 29-year-old single moms who have run for office. And that is a shame. We need more people like that running, because we all have very unique life experiences that we bring to the table. I think that, like I mentioned before, I really want to focus on the things that impact Kentucky families, things that my family went through as they were bringing me up. I grew up here in Frankfort. My dad went to Kentucky State and then worked for state government and IT. My mom has worked in a couple of different things. She's worked in insurance. She worked for a dentist office. And so I grew up in a family that was a working family that had to work really hard to succeed, and they did that. And now I'm in the same situation with my son. And, it's hard. And we should be doing all we can to make it a little bit easier for families to focus on their families and not paying their bills and the struggles. I was telling someone today, earlier I got a huge bill in the mail for a surgery that my son had to have. We need to be focusing on things that make it easier for our families, whether that's universal pre-K or affordable childcare. And not only affordable childcare, but making sure that our childcare providers, our teachers, are paid well, because they help raise our children. I think that those are issues that affect families every day, and that, like I said, we're frustrated that they're not being paid attention to. I think a lot of times these politicians with their resumes get into it to further their resumes, and I really want to do this to focus on families like mine.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, how infuriating is it to watch the legislature just, sit on this historic rainy day fund where there's a deluge coming in terms of childcare in our Commonwealth. And as you nailed it, like it's one of the most important things, for families to be successful and to be able to meet all the other needs of providing for your family. And it's just, the math doesn't work out for so many of these childcare providers that just need some support. As I got to imagine, as a single mom, that's something that caught your eye in terms of this current legislature and what they're doing and not doing, rather.
Yeah, definitely. And sorry about this. This is the danger of doing an interview at home. The child is quiet, but the cat is not.
all coworkers are welcome here. This is a safe space for although maybe they don't want to be there anymore. They're trying to get out. I'm not gonna ask you any questions, Kat. It's fine, you can stay. So I guess from the child care to the how bringing your perspective as a working mom, I think you're totally right. That is one that is not terribly prominent in Washington, D.C. And I think it's a very valuable perspective to bring. And I hope that you're successful in getting a chance to share it around that enormous district. I think it's going to be something that absolutely resonates with people. What else would you tell people who are just considering, like, all right, well, I'm a voter in the first district, I think, because it's, big and I get confused. But what would you tell them in terms of like why it's worth putting aside their life, right, to come and engage and support. As a field organizer, you made those kind of recruitment calls for other candidates. What would your recruitment call for yourself sound like in terms of other working moms or people who just are trying to deal with their life and think politics is this thing like, yeah, whatever, it's on TV, but it doesn't really. Why should I put my time and energy into making it better? What's your recruitment pitch there?
Oh my gosh, I love that. You're making me think on the spot here because I haven't had to do it in this way. I mean, it's hard. I'm putting my life on hold too. So I totally get it. It is a huge, scary commitment to make when we want to spend time with our kids and our families. But for the single moms out there, the families in particular, it's not just about us and the sacrifice we make. We make all kinds of sacrifices, but those sacrifices we make are for our families. And there's nothing better that we can do for our children and future Americans than taking an hour aside in our week and trying to make an impact for their future. We've seen some of the consequences that have come about by sitting back, unfortunately, thinking that we're safe and that these rights that we think are inherent and protected, when we sit, they might not be as safe as we think they are. And we want to do everything we can for our children. We have so much to think about in their futures. And we want to set a really good example of service for our kids. I think everybody wants to see their kid involved and living a productive life. So it's worth coming out even for an hour just to try to make an impact for their future. Hopefully that answers your question.
I think so. That's good. I think it'll work. I think. Write that one down. Write that script down for sure. Chris, what do you got?
Yeah, I've got two other questions for you, just because I haven't heard you touch on them yet. So I'm curious. One, how would you like to address climate change? And two, you going into U.S. Congress, you're going to have an effect on foreign policy. So I would like your pitch on your thoughts on what's going on abroad.
Yeah, those are two huge issues. So you're really just going for it, Chris. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's so funny. I saw the bill that they're trying to pass in Florida preventing climate change from being mentioned in future legislation. I think that's what it is. I glanced at it this morning. Crazy to me. We're living in a world where it's undeniable that the climate is changing. If you disagree that it's for human created, by human created things, that's one thing, but it's obvious that the climate is changing and it's going to have really far reaching consequences for not only us, but really our children. And I think we see Gen Z, millennials really activating around that because we're going to have to live in that world and it's scary. I think that we have to continue to investigate ways to make a difference and make a change. And I don't know, I think it's obvious we haven't done enough. When we're doing that, I think it's really important that we involve people of all different walks of life. Climate change is impacting a lot of different types of people. It's had millions, billions of dollars of property damage on urban cities from storms and farmers who, have crops that are depleted due to drought. And so we need to really involve all of those people in those conversations about creative ways that we can ensure a good future for our children, because this issue is not going away and we have kept passing the buck along and it's scary. So I kind of get why people are afraid to act on it. We don't almost want to acknowledge that it's happening, but it is happening and it's going to change the world that we have. So I think it's really important that we put a big emphasis on creative ways to solve this while also helping to ensure that people's still have a living, whether that's a farmer or someone that's in an area that's going to be impacted by that. We have to do more. I don't think that there's any way that we could say differently. And then foreign policy wise, I don't talk about this a lot because it's not foreign policy, but I don't talk about my family a lot. But my brother is a member of the Army. And so, we've had to see him go through deployments to the Middle East, and it's scary. And what's happening in the Middle East in Gaza is a humanitarian tragedy. There is no denying that. What happened in October was a tragedy, but there has to be a ceasefire. We have to have action and think about a long-term solution. I think unfortunately, the president isn't doing as much as he could, and we really need to be pushing that pressure and making sure we're holding lawmakers accountable and having really important conversations about ways that we can help ensure peace.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. And then, I think glad to hear you say climate change is real and we need to address it. It is scary for sure. But I also just wanted to point out that like right now in Kentucky, like we're going to have more people working in the EV battery manufacturing world than we do on coal mines. Right. So it's like the future can be scary if you think about the impacts of climate change, but the solutions to climate change actually bring jobs as well. And as long as we're like making sure that those jobs are being deployed in the communities that need them, whether that's kind of urban or rural or historic coal counties or whatever, like we can actually provide more opportunities for future generations while we combat what we have to combat, so there's any opportunity for future generations, right? I'm a father of 2 girls, and like it's terrifying, to think about the world that we're creating for them. And I know Teddy, is younger than my kids, but I definitely see the value and the need to address it here. And I don't want to like critique our governor a ton, but I think this is like he's embraced the EV world, which is awesome, but he hasn't like really rallied our state around the issue. I don't know that he's ever said climate change. So, I think he's in a position to really help inform our state about what opportunities are there are for us. So I'm glad to hear you kind of just embrace it and as an issue that we really need to challenge ourselves on. And also just to say really clearly, like, you think the crisis at the border is bad now, continue to ignore climate change because it is only going to make that crisis far more more significant, with more people fleeing, more horrific scenarios, and so we have to like get our arms around this for sure, for lots of important reasons. All right, I'm gonna step off my soapbox. I'm gonna ask you one more question, Erin. So how can people support your campaign and your candidacy? I put you on the spot with your recruitment pitch. I thought it was pretty good. Now that people have heard it, I'm sure they're fired up to get involved. How can they help out?
Yeah, I hate making this ask, but the reality of it is that it's going to cost a lot of money. As a field organizer, Erin, it's a hard ask to make because I just want to ask people to knock on doors. But the district is huge. It is. I'm running against an incumbent with a huge profile, unfortunately. And so in order to really, create the buzz that we need in this race, to do what we need to in this race, it is going to cost a lot of money. So if you're in a place where you can make a financial contribution, that is of course incredibly helpful. Also, volunteering. If you're not someone that can give your time, give your money, giving time is also huge. I'm the kind of person that giving time was my way of giving back. So I know what an impact a door knock makes. Talking to your neighbors, having a really good discussion about this race and helping get my name out there is going to make a huge difference as well. So either of those is great. Please visit my website. If you haven't already, you can sign up there and we'll make sure that you're on our mailing list so that you can know when we have things coming up and when we're getting out there to knock on doors and to make phone calls. It's easy. It's Erin, ERIN 4FORKY.com. Would love for you to visit the site and follow me on social media. I think all of those things are helpful in making sure we get up a profile and we're making people focus on this race.
Awesome. Well, Erin, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for doing this, right? For that call to like action and that public service, and that just to have a real exciting candidate bringing a fresh perspective, hopefully to Washington, D.C., but certainly to the conversation about the first district and what it deserves in terms of representation. And I think a lot of people agree that Jamie Comer has been an embarrassment. And just talking to you now, it's very clear that you would not be an embarrassment. So let's make that happen. You got some time. November's. You got a lot of time to put into this campaign to get your name out there. But yeah, anyone who's hearing this and it has been inspired, like I have, by Erin and her story and her work, please do share it so more and more people know that's happening. But yeah, Erin, thank you so much for what you're doing and for joining us to tell us about it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been fun. I appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Well, like I said, there's some time between now and November. Don't hesitate to let us know if you want to come back on. Exciting opportunities to kind of continue to tell that story for sure.
I would love it. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So to put Chris on the spot, I don't know if you have the interest in closing out the show.
I do.
We'd appreciate it very much. Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project and Commonwealth Alliance for Voter Engagement, CAVE, and are also proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Next week, we'll be joined by another wonderful guest. Watch for announcements on our Facebook page. Production of episode 157 was by the phenomenal Connor. Abigail did not do this one. Big thanks to Nate Orsham, who wrote and performed our theme songs. You can find more information and music at natosongs.com. If you miss our weekly live stream on Facebook or YouTube, audio podcasts and our show notes are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and whatever you get your podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you do listen to the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you are listening to it right now. Logo and some graphic content provided by Couchfire Media. More information can be found at couchfiremedia.com. All right, people. Thanks for watching us.